Hi, my name is Sam Led, and welcome to The Fearless Now. This is for you, and you in the nosebleed seats. If you're looking for an easier way to approach anxiety, stress, and unhealthy habits from the inside out, there's no techniques and no strategies. So sit back, relax, and let me be your peace of mind Uber driver here on The Fearless Now. Welcome to the Fearless Now podcast. My name is Sam Led. I'm a transformational coach, soon to be author of the book called Fearless. And I create this podcast for you guys, for you, and you over there, row H, seat number 7 there in the nosebleed seats. And it's so good to be here. We are in the final weeks of 2021. And does it seem like it's Groundhog Day still, right? I mean, things really changed in the outside world there. I mean, let's be honest. And I don't even want to think about it, because it doesn't serve any purpose, and I'm rambling on. Because we have more important things to share. We have wisdom and knowledge and insight to share that is within all of us, that we are born with. It's our innate and true nature, that under the noise of thought and thinking, we see our essential nature, our true north, our bright north star every single day. We just are not paying attention to it enough. And that's the principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. There will not be a test at the end of this podcast, I promise you, because I don't want to lose listeners. I mean, subscribe if you want. But before we get to the meat and potatoes, what I want to talk about, what I want to share, and hopefully there'll be some wisdom or not. I don't know. I'm just winging it, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're all just winging it. We all just doing the best we can with the amount of thinking and we have on board is just what our brain's doing in the moment. And we don't have any control of that one. Don't try to control your brains, ladies and gentlemen. It's a lose-lose battle, but just see it. Anyways, we're going to talk about all that and more. But before we get started, I want you to buy me a coffee. And that's actually a website where you can donate to this podcast. If you love what you hear, if you are really seeing how much this podcast is helping you or helping those in need in your family or your friends, coworkers, even pets, maybe some of them are listening as well. Please go to buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow, buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow. And whatever you can donate, whatever whatever is in your budget, whether it's $1, $5, a couple of Benjamins would be nice, but the more money that we can put toward this podcast, the more innovative, creative, and thought-provoking programs we can share. Well, I can share, and then maybe it'll become a we. I'll find a co-anchor, and we can pretend like we're really important and speaking to each other on these 21st century microphones. So go to buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow, buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow. And I'm just so much appreciated, so grateful for all of you. For you and you there in the nosebleed seats. And this is a community. This podcast is community because it is who all of you are. We all have this human experience. And this human experience doesn't always have to be so turbulent and difficult. Once we understand how the mind works, how the mind really works, not we've been conditioned to think how it works And struggling is optional in many respects, and there's nothing wrong with struggling. But once we see that, we are far beyond the sum total of our thinking, that we all have this really special place, which is our default state that we're going to get into later in this episode and all of my episodes. So please donate, please, whatever it is, $1, $5, $10, whatever you can afford. I'm so grateful. It's buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow. Okay, we're back, everybody. The Fearless Now is really a labor of love that's really transformed into something that is getting bigger and bigger with each episode. The guests that are coming on are just so brilliant, so thought-inspiring, have so much to share with you guys. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast. This podcast is a community. It's a world community that we're building here on The Fearless Now. And it's just the beginning. So enough of the promotion, the fearless promotion. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about. So how are you guys doing? Did you get all your Christmas shopping done? Or your Hanukkah shopping or your Kwanzaa shopping done? Did you buy some cool gifts? Did you put your Christmas tree up or your menorah up or whatever you put up, this is a great time of year. It's really a metaphor. Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and even towards New Year's is of what's possible when we see below the noise of all our worries and our anxieties and our future fantasy thinking about what we need to do tomorrow and what's not working well and what we need to fix. Well, our brain is telling us that it's actually not truth. None of it, 100% of it is not truth. And we're present with each other, whether you have a big family or a small family, you have a lot of friends or only a couple friends, whether you're married or single or you're in a partnership. This time of year is a real metaphor for what's possible when we are in the present moment and not in the noise of our chaotic thinking. And it's kind of a glimpse to see what is possible. And it's within all of us. It's what's possible within our hearts, within our souls, underneath this computer generated reality, this in real time scripted narration that's being fed to us through this machine, this very sophisticated MacBook Pro between your ears that is just kicking some fresh nonsense a lot of the time between our ears, which is not truth. It feels like truth, but it really isn't. And when you listen to this podcast, please don't listen to my word that Sydney Banks, the great Scottish mystic who had this mystical epiphany and experience like all great sages do, and saw that suffering's optional, that we are not the sum total of our thinking, and that the content of our thinking doesn't matter when we're caught up, when we're feeling anxious, sad, depressed, even if it feels real, even if our brain is pointing to our husband or to our partner or to our coworker or to our dog or cat or a friend or the carpet below you that is your brain is telling you is the reason why you're feeling this way, which is complete bullshit, 100%, even though it feels that way. Because in an hour or two, you'll be okay again. You'll be calm. You'll see what I'm pointing to. So we're going to digress a second. And my partner and I, my beloved partner and I, were watching The Never-Ending Story, a beloved movie from my childhood from the early 80s. I'm aging myself, but yes, from the early 80s, I was a little kid. And The Never-Ending Story, when I watched it all the way back then, I really didn't appreciate what it was really pointing to and what the metaphors in the movie were. But there was this scene in The Never-Ending Story where Atria was this young boy, gets stuck in this quicksand-like mud pools. And it's like a swamp, a barren swampland. It's dark and cold and full of these weird and dangerous creatures. And the longer you stay in this swamp, the more depressed and the more unhappy you are. The funny thing of it all, it's called the swamp of sadness. That's right, the swamp of sadness. And when I was watching it 35 plus years later, sitting next to my beloved girlfriend, and we're kind of going back in time to when we saw it as little kids, something rang true for me about that swamp of sadness, that when Atrio, the main character, finally was able to get out of this dark and depressing Nowhereville where people and things go to die in this made up story, this fantasy. A neurodivergent or a neurodiverse person with ADHD, we get caught up in that dark, depressing swamp of sadness a lot of the time. And it manifests as when we wake up first thing in the morning and the weight of the world is on our shoulders because for whatever reason, our brain's doing some weird, either anxious repackaging of a old story or what happened yesterday, packaging it up for us and throwing in some future fantasy doom and gloom thinking about what ifing everything and what's going to happen tomorrow if we don't do this. And we forget a lot of the time when we wake up first thing in the morning, what we need to do for the day, even though if it's a parent that we have to go to work or we have to go to school or we have to take the kids to school. A lot of the times it takes us a little while to get the gears going in our brain, to boot up the supercomputer, the laptop between our ears, because we're stuck in this very weird kind of limbo called I call it the swamp of sadness. And it's hard to language it, but it feels like for a lot of us ADHDers, and again, it's a neurotype. ADHD doesn't exist. It's just how a brain works. It's how a brain synapses, and neurodiverse people have just a brain that synapses and works a little bit differently, right? Well, for me, and I don't want to speak for every ADHDer out there or every neurodiverse person out there with OCD or whatever it is, whatever you've been blessed with. But for me, it happens sometimes first thing in the morning. And unfortunately, it's waking up cranky and having difficulty languaging it, sharing with it to why I feel this way, because I feel immobilized. I feel stuck in a swamp, in quicksand. Literally, I can't express it. The words are not coming out of my mouth first thing in the morning. It can also happen if I've been working on a project for a long time and it took a lot of hyper focus. As you know, folks like us with neurodivergent ADHD minds, we tend to hyper focus a lot, and it can be exhausting. Think of it as like straining your eyes, looking in bright light for a long time, and then you're squinting. That's how the brain feels like. That's how we feel like if we've hyper focused on something or a project or we were at work, really try not to mess things up and just zeroing in on it. We pre-exhaust ourselves innocently. And what I'm getting to with all of this is for the ADHDer or for the person with a sensitive brain that experiences this morning or this kind of I'm out of gas feeling where you feel like you're depressed, where you feel like you're in this swamp, this dark swamp of sadness, this quicksand you can't get out of. What appeared to me is it's okay to have that feeling. It's okay to get stuck in the quicksand first thing in the morning. It's that ADHD. The pilot light is not lit first thing in the morning in our brain. So nothing is working, right? I usually to either take my medication just to get the brain started. It's kind of like, it's like the starter and the spark plugs in the combustion chamber in the engine. The ignition is kind of swallowing the water and then your brain wakes up a little bit. It's more than just sluggishness. And again, it's hard to language, but the swamp of sadness, go watch it on Hulu or wherever you watch your old movies on, or Netflix, the never ending story. It feels real some of the time. And even when I'm hyper focusing on a lot of stuff, and I had a client many years ago that had a really brilliant neurodiverse mind, but needed TLC in terms of he would get overstimulated or he would wake up in the morning crabby and he just couldn't function. And we would have a session early in the morning. And I knew that would happen. I suggested maybe we can set our sessions for later in the afternoon or even on the weekends. And he said, you know what? That's okay. I'm going to just be really present with this made up artificial darkness that I'm experiencing, this sluggishness, this depression, this current of anxiety. I can't even explain it, but I think you get what I'm sharing, what I'm pointing to. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to let this darkness, this energy of sluggishness and sadness just move through me. And Sam, I'm speaking for my client, and he would say to me, if I shared with you what was going through my mind while I'm in this state, you'd admit me to a psychiatric hospital. But I'm not going to do that because I know it's made up by a brain that loves me, right? By a brain that cares, that wants to keep me safe, thinks that it's going to keep me alive by spewing this doom and gloom thinking. And I don't need to take that on board, that the content of what's going on in my mind, again, I'm paraphrasing what my client shared with me, is complete bullshit. Now, this is after we did a lot of work together. So when he said that to me, I was just blown away because I too get stuck in the swamp of sadness almost daily, whether it's in the first thing in the morning or it's late at night or it's, after working on a project or even after traveling or even having a conversation with a family member. I don't know why. It doesn't even matter, but it happens. But when my client said that to me, when he shared that with me, I got really curious about my own experience in the swamp of sadness. I love that. Swamp of sadness. It's so prolific, right? It's brilliant. And When I'm going through it, it sucks. It's horrible, but I let it move through me. Like you can let it move through you when you're just stuck, even if your life is shitty on the outside. Because you're going to have these feelings that comes out of nowhere, whether you're rich or poor, angry, healthy, young, old, paraplegic, whatever you are, however you show up in the physical form in this world, in the situation or circumstance that shows up outside in your world, you're still going to be caught in the swamp of sadness sometimes, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm also speaking for for neurotypicals out there. And again, I'm just using this to language it because it's hard to language this. Because all of us, whether you're neurotypical, neurodiverse, you have one eye, three eyes, it doesn't matter. Our essential nature, who we are, our North Star is well-being, love, resilience, hopeful, kind, funny, present. That's who we are. That's what's on offer, not what's made up in the machinery of our thinking. The supercomputer that's creating nonsense in real time that, listen, we all experience this. We all forget who we are, what I just mentioned before. Whether you're neurotypical, neurodiverse, you come from Mars, maybe aliens have a different take on this. And of course, who knows how they work. We can't even figure out how we work. So how are we going to figure out how they work? And I got curious about my own swamp of sadness. And what I found was, as much as it sucks, as much as it's painful sometimes, as much as it's sad, like sometimes I wake up and I'm in tears for no reason. Before, it would destabilize me. It would really keep me in bed. And sometimes that happens. But most of the time, I get curious. I see what my mind is up to innocently. The mind needs to do certain things. It's just what a mind does to keep us safe. It's going to feature fantasy think. It's going to pull things from the past, thinking that the past somehow will keep us safe. The brain wants to protect itself and you, and it only knows how to do it by spewing thought any way it can. It has to. That's its job, and it's not truth. 100% of the time, it's not truth. If you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, if you're being chased by a man with a knife in a dark alley, if you're in a burning building, the brain is brilliant. But as I mentioned in all of my episodes, we're dealing with an operating system on board that hasn't had a software update since caveman times. It's a stimulus response system that also has been conditioned by our outside surroundings. And let me tell you something. Your outside surroundings in 2021, think about it. Your social media, all your computers and technology and your car and your coworkers and the drive to work and your kids and the bada boom, bada bing. It's a real drain on the brain. The brain doesn't understand any of this shit. It's a pattern recognizer, pattern generator too. And it's creating story in real time and narrating stuff and spewing it out to you in a very quick, very, very, most of the time, nonsensical fashion at you. The brain's a brilliant machine, but it's not to be trusted when you are feeling overwhelmed, sad, depressed, because your brain's trying to tell you that it's because you're poor or it's because you're sick. Now, we can still be okay with all those things, being sad and accepting sometimes we are anxious and accepting sometimes that we are poor and accepting sometimes we are depressed and accepting sometimes we're in this swamp of sadness that I sometimes experience first thing in the morning or if I'm overstimulated. What's wrong with it? It's just part of being human. And if you think that you're going to win at this game against your brain by using affirmations and using behavioral therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies, and go with God, do it. I mean, all the power to you. But what if there's something much bigger than all those behavioral tools? Then let me tell you something. If they work for you, then great. I don't have any judgment. I don't poo-poo it, but I'm pretty certain that those tools work pretty short term, that they don't last. And personally, I've had them all done to myself. EMDR, CBT, I can go on forever. And now I'm not judging that it didn't work. It worked for a little while. But when you have a system like ours, this brilliant brain of ours, it's a machine. It's not us, it's a machine that has this self-correcting system built in that if we're experiencing thought turbulence, the brain recognizes, error code, reboot, control, delete, reboot. It's liberating. It's liberating to know that you don't have any agency over your thoughts and thinking. You don't have agency over the swamp of sadness. You really don't. And if you try to control it or chant, do affirmations and do all these things that are a complete waste of time, even if you think they're working for you, even if you think they're self-soothing you, well, why don't you just sit with all this crazy thought turbulence that's going on? Just literally sit with it. Cry it out, scream it out, walk around the block, talk to a friend, go play tennis, I don't know, drink a kombucha, whatever works for you, and watch it settle on its own. And none of those things, those distracting things, actually really help because it settles on its own whether you pick up a phone and talk to a friend or not. If you allow it to, if you pay attention, if you be really curious about how the mind really works, that it's going to play all kinds of nonsensical games. It's kind of like when we were kids, before video games got really, really technical and lifelike, like it's artificial intelligence, we had games like Pac-Man. And sometimes you would put a quarter in the machine. We used to put quarters in these big, look like, what an arcade game looks like. We used to put quarters in those things and play a game until we died. And then we had to put another quarter in. Or maybe it was 50 cents. Just something like pole position was 50 cents back then. And sometimes we would approach the game and the game would be frozen, right? The game was shut off or the game was doing weird stuff. Like the graphics were smeared all over the screen. Someone kicked the machine and it messed up something inside. Well, the brain acts like that a lot of the time and thinks it's doing the right thing by making you feel scared, making you feel anxious because of something your boss said to you. But being okay with sometimes taking the bait and forgetting who we are, sometimes getting stuck in the swamp of sadness, being okay with it, not being afraid of our experience of being stuck in the swamp, and being around people that accept you for you and allow you to vent it out. I'm not talking about like being emotionally abusive or like causing a disturbance in your apartment complex by screaming and yelling. I'm talking about in healthy ways. Then you really understand now. Then you will see more of what I'm pointing to about this special space, our essential nature, that space before thought, and get less caught up in the thought turbulence and that really dark swamp of sadness, or getting caught up in insecure thinking, or getting caught up in actually believing the nonsense your brain is spewing at you when you're in a low mood, or when you got passed up on a promotion, or someone says something to you that was nasty, or someone cut you off in the freeway, or you got a cancer diagnosis, or someone died. And stop beating yourself up for having a human experience. You're going to go crazy once in a while. Not crazy in the sense of going to a psych hospital, but crazy just being human crazy and getting angry and being sad and experiencing grief. But if you don't let that experience to move through you, and you don't really see like that is not forever, that it has to move through you, that you need to walk through the swamp of sadness to get to well-being, that who we are is so much bigger underneath that noise, that it is noise, that it means nothing. That if we can just experience the sadness and experience the anxiety and experience the overwhelm without judging ourselves or having anyone else judge us, remember, you find your tribe. And if someone is not accepting you for your special quirks and features, it's time to hit the high road, ladies and gentlemen. Then you're going to see more of the beauty of being this spiritual being inside this physical body, this meat jacket, this machine, that you'll live a more enjoyable, calm, and loving life. And you'll be able to experience more fulfillment just by being you and being okay with the swamp of sadness. There's no real a system or protocol you need to follow. There isn't. Just you being you is enough. But if you can see beyond the thought turbulence, if you can see in the horizon, in the swamp of sadness, that there's a break in the clouds, and you're going to get out of the swamp and onto a beautiful beach or onto level ground, that it won't last forever. And if you just hang in there, then you'll see more of the goodness of being alive. You'll appreciate things more. You'll love more. Most importantly, yourself first. And you won't take anything for granted. I hope this has been helpful. My name is Sam Lett. I'm a transformational coach. And this podcast is for all of you. And it's such a real blessing to just be speaking to you on this microphone, recording this podcast and sending it out into the internet ethers for all of you to enjoy. This podcast is made possible by all of you. And any donation, any monetary support would be great. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow and spend $5, $10, $1, whatever you want to contribute to support this Fearless Now community. This podcast is about building community around mental health and the principles community, about how we're all just one thought away from mental health. And it's possible. So please go to buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow. buymeacoffee.com/thefearlessnow. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope this has been helpful. And I'll see you again for another episode of The Fearless Now.